What are some psychological life hacks you can do to give you an advantage in situations? Story 1. I learned this here a few years ago. For anyone in customer service or who works in many different situations, but CS is a big one, put a mirror behind you at the counter. This way, angry customers who approach you will have to see themselves in the mirror behind you, and the chances of them behaving irrationally lowers significantly. No one wants to see themselves act like a prick. This is one of the reasons why many bars install large mirrors behind them. The main reason is so the bartender can see who is where and if any new customers approach at all times, but there are other reasons as well. If you're ever tending a bar and a customer approaches you directly and starts getting upset or angry, just take a deep breath, step slightly to either side, and lean on the bar using either your right or left elbow only. If you move your head out of the way just fast enough to break eye contact, they will be briefly forced to stare at themselves. Even if you don't move fast enough, peripheral vision always seems to notice that familiar face. Also, leaning in puts you in a position of power for quite a few reasons. Story 2. If you're in a group meeting and you suspect that someone in there might come after you about something, sit right next to them. They were hoping that the group would provide some sort of herd defense, but if you're right next to them, it can't be anything other than personal. This tends to make them back off, or at least substantially temper what they say. Source: had a job with a huge target painted on my back for years. Story 3. If you really want something from someone, frame it as an offer rather than a request. When Teddy Roosevelt was running for president, his campaign printed out 3 million leaflets with a picture of Teddy and a copy of a campaign speech. The campaign then realized that they didn't have the rights to the photo. Instead of explaining the situation to the photographer, which would have given him leverage to ask for a lot of money, the campaign made an offer that they would use the picture, giving the photographer lots of publicity if the studio paid them $250. The studio paid the money. Story 4. Late to the party, but if you're playing beer pong and your opponent is playing like he sold his soul to the devil, all you have to do is ask what he is doing with his opposite throwing hand. Damn, bro, you're playing hella good. What are you doing with your left hand when you shoot? This will make him conscious of his left hand and he will start messing up almost every time. Drink well, my friends. Story 5. In sales, though I guess it could be applied in other ways, once you make the sales pitch, don't say anything else. My boss at an old job was training me and just giving me pointers. I was working at a gym trying to sell memberships. He told me that once I got all the small talk out of the way and presented the prices, the first person to talk would lose. It didn't seem like a big deal, but it actually worked. Often there were long periods of awkward silence as the person tried to come up with some excuse, but usually they bought. It was quite impressive actually. Story 6. Promise yourself you'll never talk bad about other people, even when the people around you are talking badly. Even when you agree with the bad things they're saying, you don't have to make a big deal of it, just don't partake in it. Once people get the idea you're not into saying mean things about other people behind their backs, the amount of shit they talk around you will decrease. It isn't fun to talk crap unless everybody's talking crap. Your decision to stop talking and their eventual reaction to you not reciprocating the talking will positively affect both of you as well as your relationship. I don't know, for me, since I made this change in how I interact with people, the amount and quality of my friendships has grown. People will trust you more if they haven't listened to you gossip about other people. You will be seen as a more positive person than other friends who do talk shit. The gap gossiping used to fill will be replaced with way more interesting and/or intimate conversation too. Story 7. For interviews, I recommend altering your psychological state beforehand. Tell yourself, I've known these people all my life. We're old friends catching up. I can't wait to see them. Visualize the experience, shaking hands, making eye contact, and having a conversation. What things can you not wait to tell them? Hold an open pose. Stand with your legs apart, hands on your hips and shoulders back while doing this, and smile. This may sound cliché, but you are in charge of your own psychological state and the power of suggestion is strong. Story 8. A Navy lifer I worked with taught me the see one, do one, teach one method. The last step is the most vital step for your comprehension. If you are taught a new task at work, most people learn to do the task and then perform the task. If you find another employee to teach what you just learned, you will comprehend the concept better and retain the info for much longer. Whenever I train a new associate at work, I ask them to go show another coworker how to do the task they just learned. Magic. Story 9. I work with mentally disabled children and have found it highly beneficial to describe their capacities in such a way that I indirectly describe their limitations as opposed to the reverse. In real-life terms, avoid negative words when pitching something unfavorable to an audience that you want to receive well. If you can do it in writing, all the better because you get to pick out your words carefully. Also focus on the manner by which you intend to fix things rather than the problems. Johnny can't even speak in phrases and only turns his head to you when you say his name but doesn't make eye contact. He won't sit in a chair for more than a minute unless you repeatedly tell him to. Nope. Try again. Johnny uses words to communicate, so the next step is to strengthen his skills up to the level of 2-word phrases. He responds to his name by turning, so we're going to work on his ability to maintain eye contact. Johnny is able to remain seated for longer than 1 minute if given repeated prompting. Which would you rather hear about your kid? This also applies to other types of work. Use it to present anything negative. Works magnificently. Story 10. I remember the last time this thread showed up, someone posted that if you ask someone to do you a small favor, cognitive dissonance will make them believe that because they did that favor, they, therefore, must like you. After all, why would they help someone they disliked? I don't have a source, unfortunately, but I believe the original comment did if anyone can find the previous thread. Story 11. Make it a practice to get rid of filler words and phrases such as, like, you know, etc. Instead, use short pauses to gather your thoughts before speaking, though avoid Shatner-style pauses. Using filler words keys whoever you're talking to that you are thinking about what you're saying. Leaving them out makes these thinking spots less noticeable, since you aren't essentially announcing to the world that you are thinking, and makes you seem more sure of yourself. Story 12. Pay attention to people's feet. If you approach 2 people in the middle of a conversation and they only turn their torsos and not their feet, they don't want you to join in the conversation. Similarly, if you are in a conversation with a coworker who you think is paying attention to you and their torsos turn towards you but their feet are facing in another direction, they want the conversation to end. You should check out Carol Kinsey-Goman's research on these types of things in the workplace. Story 13. Plan something every Wednesday that you can look forward to. Everyone looks forward to the weekend, but that always seems like a long way away when you are getting up on Monday. If you plan something small to do, like treating yourself to some frozen yogurt or setting up a movie date, you will look forward to that at the beginning of the week. Then by the time it's over, half the week has gone by, and you are that much closer to the weekend. Story 14. This has been posted before, but if you want to stare at someone unashamedly, look directly past them and wait for them to try and meet your eyes. When they fail to do that, they'll look around, usually nervously for a second, and won't look at you again for some time. This is your chance to stare at this person for at least 45 seconds. Story 15. This sounds a bit silly, but if you're asking for a favor, always use the word because. I remember reading about a study done at a university where they used every imaginable combination of words to ask if they could cut in line for the photocopier, and they found that using the word because short-circuited people's brains into believing that there's a reason for it, even if they said something stupid like, "Could I please cut in line because I need to make some copies?" Story 16. When you find yourself in a situation where you're forced to do a job you don't care about, instead of thinking of the job as something you're doing while you wait for your one true passion, just forget about what it means to you and think instead about doing it well. Making sandwiches to pay the bills? Make really good sandwiches and be friendly. Does scut work for your coworkers since you're the lowest on the totem pole? Do really good scut work. Sweeping floors? Make your floors the cleanest. If you get your ego out of the way, you'll realize that there's a lot of joy to be found in doing anything well, with passion, integrity, and care for the people who you're serving, and the people around you will recognize you as a passionate, serious, caring person, even if what you're doing isn't what you're truly passionate about. Perhaps more importantly, it will create the habit of excellence. You don't develop that habit by slacking your whole life and then suddenly being awesome once you reach an imaginary plateau. Story 17. If you want to build rapport or gain someone's trust quickly, match their body posture and position. If someone is sitting with her legs crossed, cross your legs. If they're leaning away from you, lean away from them. If they're leaning towards you, lean towards them. Mirroring and matching body position is a subconscious way to tell if someone trusts you or is comfortable with you. If you're sitting with your arms crossed and you notice someone else is sitting with her arms crossed, that is a good indicator that you are successfully building rapport with that person. You can use this in any situation where you need to gain somebody's trust quickly. Matching somebody else's body posture well psychologically signals to them that they can be comfortable around you. This can benefit you in any job situation or any interviewing situation, or any situation where you need to gain a person's trust quickly. Did I mention it builds trust quickly? Story 18. If you and a co-workers are slacking off just talking to each other and your supervisor comes up and starts saying, "What the hell are you doing?" or blaming your group for something, just look at one of your co-workers and don't make eye contact with your boss. Your co-worker will likely be looking at your boss, and when your boss sees you looking at the co-worker, the anger will be directed at them and not you. It works almost every time. A guy I worked with used to be the laziest and always started screwing around but never got in trouble. He told me his secret and I have used it successfully ever since. Story 19. You are in control of your emotions and thoughts. Try replacing some immediate responses. Tell yourself you're happy about something or you're excited. Eventually, your brain will end up believing it. That's the same for being down. And that's why you should never try to diagnose yourself. Saying you're depressed or have social anxiety would end up with you being more anxious and more depressed. You won't notice it at first, but over a few months, it will have a pretty noticeable effect on your personality. Story 20. Stand up straight, no slouching, hands out of pockets, and head held up high. It's not just a cliche. You literally feel better, and people around you feel more confident in you. Not always a must, but try to dress well for important occasions, including interviews. If you look good, you feel good, and if you feel good, you'll do good. In a negotiation setting, always start by anchoring, meaning start on a more radical extreme end of what you expect to get. That way, you and the other side can work toward that result rather than locking yourself out of it. Avoid saying "I think" and "I believe" unless absolutely necessary. These are phrases that do not evoke confidence and will literally do you no good. When playing a game of cards with casual players, mutter to yourself the exact opposite of what you want to happen. So if you want your opponent to fold, then mutter, "Please don't fold, please don't fold." An overwhelming amount of times, the opponent will fall for the bait. When feeling anxious, clean up your house, apartment. You will feel happier and more accomplished than before. From an academic standpoint, this is mostly just armchair psychology, but from a real-world standpoint, these have all worked very well in my personal and professional lives. Story 21. If you forget someone's name at a social gathering, introduce them to someone you know. They will automatically say their name every time and you can capture it. You say to an unknown named person, "This is my friend, Poopface," to which the unknown named person responds, "Hello, Poopface, I'm Scott. Nice to meet you." Story 22. The Benjamin Franklin Effect. My favorite psychological phenomenon is cognitive dissonance. It's when you hold two opposing beliefs or values and it causes what's known as psychological discomfort. When this happens, you'll act or think in a way to ease the discomfort, usually by trying to blend the beliefs, values, by changing the way that you think, act in terms of one of them. The Benjamin Franklin effect is what happens when you arouse cognitive dissonance in someone who doesn't like you by asking them to do you a small favor. If they do the favor, which they probably will if it's small enough of a request, then you invoke cognitive dissonance as they hold two beliefs, that they don't like you, but that they are willing to help you out. This results in them trying to resolve this psychological discomfort by creating the belief that they actually like you. So you can turn your enemies into your friends simply by asking them to do you a small favor. Very cool, very useful. Or at least Benjamin Franklin thought so. Story 23. Your actions affect your attitudes more than your attitudes affect your actions. This goes for moral, ethical stuff, but also mood. If you're feeling down, doing what you would have done if you were happy will make you more happy, not including depression. As my former teacher said, you can jump and dance in joy, but you can also jump and dance yourself joyfully. Story 24. For taking tests. Always have a water bottle with you and chew mint-flavored gum or have mints on you. An hour of sleep before midnight is the equivalent of 2 hours after midnight with serotonin levels, so try to sleep early and wake early and you'll feel more rested. You're more likely to retain knowledge by spacing out study sessions and getting 8 hours of sleep the night before than cramming and getting less sleep. the things you learn from having a biopsychology degree. Story 25. At work, I used to depend on the input of one of my team members. He was really argumentative and mostly a massive but unfortunately, he was absolutely amazing at what he did, so we all just put up with it. He took every opportunity to undermine me and make me look better than me, etc., etc. Anyway, I used to manipulate him really well with a, "Mate, I'm totally stuck here. What do you think's the best way to do it?" And straight off the bat, he'd just tell me the best thing to do. Or if I was torn between two ideas and I knew he wouldn't pick either, just to be a prick, I'd tell him we've got two choices. But before I give him a chance to shoot them down, I'd then ask him which he thought would work best for him. Worked every time, until he showed his cock to a woman and we sacked him. Story 26. Before an interview, go to the bathroom and strike a power pose for 2 minutes. For example, stand with your chest out, hands on your hips, and chin in the air. There was a lecture on TED Talks by a woman who said that your posture can affect the amount of testosterone that your body produces. If we stretch our bodies out to take up as much space as possible, our bodies will react by producing more testosterone. Therefore, you will feel more confident about yourself during the interview. IDK the link to the video, but hopefully someone can upload it. Story 27. If someone is yelling about something and you need to calm them down, don't respond at their volume level but at one much lower, softer. Eventually, they will follow the cue, either because they suddenly realize how ridiculous they sound being the only one yelling, or simply because animal behaviorism and reverse psychology. I don't really understand why, just the fact that it has worked in the situations I've employed it. Story 28. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you are already established in a group, temporary withdrawal from it will make you more talked about and even more admired. You must learn when to leave. Create value through scarcity. The 48 Laws of Power. Story 29. If you ever have to ask someone to leave your business, party, event, home for being too drunk, don't yell or try to intimidate the person. Instead, you should sound stern but deeply disappointed in the person. This way, the person won't mirror your aggression toward but your disappointment in them. I was a bouncer and bartender for years, and not once did I ever get into a fight, even on the rowdiest days, using this method. Story 30. When someone gets in your face screaming, let them get it out, then lower your voice in response. So now, it's close to a whisper. You'd be amazed how quickly they lower their tone and focus clearly on their issue. Works wonders. Also, always leave your adversary an escape route. Backing them into a corner will only make them hardened and immovable. Letting them leave with a modicum of respect means a win-win for both parties. Story 31. This will undoubtedly be buried, but if you deem yourself remotely intellectually superior to your peers, co-workers, etc., allowing yourself to be perceived as less intelligent is an advantage. And if you're on the other side of the coin and posed a question you can't answer, just reciprocate it into another question. I've worked with the smartest and dumbest, and both tend to succeed with this advice when applied appropriately. Story 32. This might be buried, but super helpful life hack. Don't forget that every day you have thousands of thoughts. You choose to pay attention to some and not others. Some of these thoughts are less helpful than other thoughts, which is important, as what you choose to pay attention to can change your emotions and behaviors. Also, we treat every thought we have as a complete fact, and that has to be true, which is not always the case. We often have thoughts that are really just made up, like, if I eat this, I won't fit into my shirt. So if you're ever having a moment of sadness or feeling bad about something in the past/future, just think, is this true? For example, it signals next thought to action. I'm hungry. I ate 3 hours ago. I'm only hungry because I'm fat. If you want to lose weight, you shouldn't eat. Sadness, anger, resentment, etc. If you recognize that these thoughts you're having early on, I'm only hungry because I'm fat, are not fact, then you stop the train of thought. This can be applied to many situations. Thus, you become less tied down in your thoughts and are able to connect with the world more and live your life. Story 33. If someone asks you a tough question, for example, an oral presentation, always say, "That's a great question." It will give you time to think of an answer by explaining how it is, in fact, a great question, and they will stop listening anyway because they are overcome by the self-satisfaction of asking a good question. The audience will too, and you will no longer be liable to come up with fantastic answers for this tough question, merely a satisfactory answer. Story 34. The only person you're in control of in this world is yourself. The only thing you really control is your reaction. Don't let other people's choices, actions, or unforeseen events bother you, and don't let them dictate your reactions. I was diagnosed with cancer at Christmas and got a fast ride on this road. Life sucks and lots of things suck, but if I spend all of my time focusing on how much people annoy me or how awful the weather is, I'm wasting my potential happiness. I'm in control of my attitude, and I'm choosing to be positive. Story 35. I'm not sure if this is a psychological life hack, so much a great way to think about things. I'll mention it anyway. Whenever someone puts me down or I have a really bad day, I just think a simple thought. Even though it seems like this person doesn't like me, or even though this person is being really annoying, they're just doing it to help me. I kind of imagine that everyone else is in some sort of state of enlightenment, and the only reason that someone would throw something or another my way is because they're actually just trying to help me reach that state of enlightenment. Whether or not this is true is a completely different matter, but it is a nice way to go through life, and it certainly makes it easier to deal with the occasional jerk. Story 36. If you are dealing with someone more powerful than you in an adversarial situation, people tend to mirror the verbal habits of people that they perceive as more powerful. Avoid doing this as it plays into their sense of power. Pause and wait before you talk. Then talk slowly and confidently. People with more power talk in such a way. You don't have to answer questions directly. Doing so plays into their sense of power. Answer questions with questions. Absolutely avoid nodding along and making eye contact while they are speaking. This gives them more confidence. When they speak, act bored, stare into space, etc. This can be flustering. Pretend to be really confused about things, even if you understand perfectly. Ask people to explain themselves. Then ask them to explain more. This has a way of wearing out adversaries. Story 37. I may be a little late to this, but reading over a Teddy Roosevelt fact down below, I remembered something. Note, I don't know where the fact came from or if it's even true. When negotiating, always ask for more than what you expect to get. I assume it was Roosevelt, but one of the presidents asked for many more missiles or something similar than he actually wanted. He knew that if he asked for how many were needed, he was not going to get them, so he asked for a ridiculous amount and was approved for how many he needed. This worked with my mom a few days ago when she purchased a new car. The dealer was asking for about $24,000 on a 2014 Nissan Rogue, and we got the price down to just over $19,000 after 2 trade-ins. The salesperson tried to get her to around $18,500, but my mom wasn't having it. He walked away and came back and said he was going to give us additional money for the vehicles and lower the price of the car by $500. Walked out only paying $18,300. Story 38. Bit late, but I've learned this from a secretary a few years back. If presented with a choice, people will be inclined to choose the last choice presented to them. In her case, this worked because asking, "Should I take a note for said person?" or "Will you call back yourself?" would lead people to call back themselves much more often, making her work easier. Now, this doesn't work with all questions. Do you want to go to Venice or Rome for holidays? But it usually works with questions where the choice isn't that important. Do you want to eat pizza or take out Chinese? Is another good one. Put the choice you want them to take as the last one and pray they take the bait. Another pro tip. Don't let them know you do this, or they may think you're putting your choice as the last one when that ain't necessarily true.